I'm Brian, and this is Game Story Basics. Today I want to talk about a particular type of character. When you are building your story, it helps to sort of categorize characters a little bit. And there's a particular kind of side character that I call the anchor character. That may be an official name somewhere, or maybe for a different kind of character. I don't know. It's just a name I made up, though. And this is a character who, in some way, is anchoring the protagonist to the start point of their journey. So a real quick example, in episode 4, A New Hope of Star Wars, Uncle Owen is an anchor on Luke. The uncle in particular has convinced Luke that he needs to stay on Tatooine, he needs to be a farmer, that Uncle Owen needs him, that he shouldn't be messing around with going out on a quest. So he's holding Luke back. When Uncle Owen dies, that opens the way for Luke to go on his big adventure. He literally says, "There's nothing here for me now." So he can go on his adventure because the anchor that was holding him to the start point has been removed. The reason I don't say the anchor character holds the protagonist back, instead I say they hold them to the start point, is because there's other functions that anchor characters serve. They don't necessarily just block the character from going on their adventure. Another example of an anchor character would be in the TV show The Sopranos. Tony's family very much suspects what he does for a living, but they don't know the details. And so Tony has to go about his business, go through the adventures of being a mobster without letting any of that overflow back into his life. He doesn't need his kids or his wife finding out the specifics of what he does. That is a very common use for the anchor character because it lets you have plots where the actual story that's going on is going to spill over back into the normal world from the beginning of the story, and you can't let that happen. So that adds an extra layer of tension and conflict to the story. Is we have to keep the anchor character from finding out what's going on. But there's another kind of role for the anchor character, and that's actually the one I wanted to talk about most. And that is in stories where a character is being self-destructive or going down some kind of a dark, bad path, the anchor character, who's from their normal life from the start of the story, also represents a way back. If you go to this character and say, "I've done some bad things, blah, blah, blah," they go, "Well, like maybe we have to go to the police and you serve your time and we can return to the way things were." So a very strong example of that kind of a role for an anchor character is Skyler White from Breaking Bad. There's a lot of storylines where Walt has to try to hide, particularly early in the series, Walt has to try to hide from her what's happening with him about his descent into the drug underworld. But where Skyler's different from the Soprano family is that Tony Soprano was a gangster when we met him, right? He's not really going on a journey into being something new. We're just following along with him as he sort of goes through the ins and outs of the life that he has, which is a perfectly valid type of story. But Breaking Bad is the story of a character who's going through a transformation. So Skyler represents that tension of we have to hide this from her, but she also represents the way back, right? The way that the character could return to the normal world, and where they might have to, again, suffer the penalties of the things they've done, but that's the way back. And that's an important function in a story for a character to have. If you just had this story where Walter White slowly descends further and further into the criminal underworld, it would be a great, tense, interesting, well-written story, and we'd be along for the journey, but it would be missing something. The constant presence of this anchor character who represents and is a callback to and is a road back to the life the character had at the very start is necessary. It's really important to keep the context of the whole sort of on the character. We won't feel the character's descent if we don't have a sense of where the surface that they're descending from is, right? An interesting thing about an anchor character who plays that kind of role is that they are generally hated by viewers. And Skyler is actually an outstanding example of that. She is one of the most hated characters in the Breaking Bad universe. So let's get something out there right away and just deal with this right away. Is it misogyny? Yes, of course it's misogyny. The hatred for Skyler White. Skyler is a problematic character, but Breaking Bad is a story of deeply flawed characters. In a world of problematic characters, Skyler is one of the least problematic. I think even allowing for the misogyny, the hatred for Skyler White is also the product of another thing that's going on with anchor characters. We'll talk about what that other thing is next time. But that's all for now for anchor characters.